Let us listen to the words of the 8th Psalm. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is thy name in all the earth, thou whose glory above the heavens is chanted by the mouths of babes and the infants. Thou hast found a bulwark because of thy foes, to still the enemy and the avenger. When I look at the heavens and the works of thy fingers, the moon and the stars which thou hast established, what is man that thou art mindful of him, the son of man that thou dost care for him? Yet thou hast made him little less than God, and dost crown him with glory and honor. Thou hast given him dominion over the works of thy hands. Thou hast put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, and also the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the sea. O Lord, how majestic is thy name in all the earth. It seemed that there were two boys doing a little boasting about their families, and one said, my great-grandfather fought with Napoleon. My grandfather fought with the French, and my dad fought with the Americans. To which his friend replied, your relatives couldn't get along with anybody, could they? The two scripture lessons this morning read by Robin feature Jesus' exhortation to share love and understanding and healing with those who are in need of love and understanding and healing. This is my commandment, as John 15 says, that you love one another as I have loved you. And Jesus in Matthew 25 does nothing less than command his followers to feed the hungry, to give drink to those who are thirsty, to clothe those who are in need of clothing, to welcome, to embrace the stranger, and to visit the sick, and to visit those who are in prison. As University of Virginia professor Charles Marsh quoted Dietrich Bonhoeffer in his recent biography of the German pastor and Christian martyr, Bonhoeffer said, to speak of the essence of Christianity is to affirm the heart's trusting submission to a loving God. Love's power to inspire the person toward a life enamored with the good, energized by grace, and in the service of neighbor. And as we know, when you serve others, your life becomes a healing presence. I was thinking about this in regard to our own nation as we celebrate the birth of our country, of course, this weekend, which 240 years ago declared independence in the presence of overwhelming odds and what was once thought to be an unthinkable victory in the Revolutionary War. My thoughts centered around the hundreds of millions of people who have been the beneficiaries of America's healing spirit, including myself. My daughter-in-law was granted political asylum by the United States, as was her parents when they came to America from Venezuela to escape totalitarianism and repression 15 years ago. America the healer opened its doors to her and to her parents for refuge and sanctuary from politically repressive leadership. Now we read today about the doubling down of corruption in that same country, where supermarket lines stretch for hours and where there's an emergency shortage of medicine, and blackouts have become a part of the landscape. These are just several examples of how our nation has helped heal those who come to America in search of peace and opportunity. America, the healer. When 56 patriots signed the Declaration of Independence, as we saw a little clip from the movie John Adams, including Presbyterian minister John Witherspoon, the only clergyman, I said this probably about 40 times before, the only clergyman to actually sign the Declaration of Independence. These signers stuck their necks out to initiate and institute not only independence from tyranny, but also a nation where equality and compassion would be built into the fabric of our country, creating a spirit of healing for the many immigrants who came to its shores, leaving behind little opportunity and coming in favor of wide opportunity. And the nation, as we know, will be built upon the foundation of liberty and justice for all. Gone will be the days of privilege and the pursuit of happiness just for a select few. But a wider net had been cast to all to better their lives and to practice their faith free from interference and free from persecution. The spirit of America, my friends, heals. And Matthew 25 reminds us to take care of those in need, and John 15 tells us to love one another as I have loved you. America's generosity has helped heal broken hearts and has helped heal broken spirits, has helped heal broken dreams. Consider the number of homeless, for instance, housed and fed every year in our nation. The number of churches, for instance, to help underwrite the shelters, the community meals, the food pantries throughout the country. Consider the number of higher institutions of learning whose alumni and friends support their colleges and universities, as they do here at Kansas State, making it possible for many first-generation students and many others to have a shot at college when otherwise they wouldn't. The healing spirit of music and the arts, the concert halls and the theaters and the art museums, all these doors would be closed if it weren't for the generosity of Americans. The thousands of churches whose pulpits share the gospel, whose choir lofts and whose instruments fill God's house with beautiful sounds, and whose ministries of compassion and help those who are down and out, but as far as the church is concerned, never out, making the United States the most religiously vital country in the entire world. All these things would never happen if it weren't for the generosity and the healing spirit of Americans. Then there are the countries that, beyond that, look to America for its healing spirit in the form of defense against tyranny and attacks from the outside, and help to lift opportunity where opportunities that doesn't otherwise exist. This is not to mention the hundreds and hundreds of nonprofit American organizations that are ready to run to the side of people all over the world who have been decimated by natural disasters and droughts and famine, including our own Presbyterian Disaster Assistance. Consider the number of people in our own country who are helped every year by hundreds of charitable organizations in our government when disaster strikes, such as the West Virginia floods. The American people rush to their sides to heal broken communities and broken hearts. America, the healer. Over the centuries, it has been ingrained in our American souls that we look out for one another, and we look out for those beyond our borders in order to protect and preserve freedom. We are a nation of givers. We are a nation of healers. We are a nation interested in promoting what is best for the people in our country and beyond. When the president and CEO of Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad and K-State alum Carl Ice was thanked for his family's generous support of K-State at the Rotary meeting just last Thursday, and was asked the reasons behind Burlington Northern Santa Fe's major sponsorship of the PBS NewsHour, Mr. Ice thought about it a little bit and made a few comments, and then he finally said, "There's no real motivation and strategy behind it. It's simply the right thing to do. The right thing to do." America has always operated on this principle. It's the right thing to do. Jesus tells us in Matthew and John that it's the right thing to do, to take care of those on the outside looking in, and to love one another as Jesus has loved us. Over the generations, our nation has followed suit. We have not always been perfect. As we know, nobody is perfect. but the spirit of giving and healing has always been at the top of the list for the Americans. We read a story last week about what I thought to be a microcosm of the spirit, of this type of spirit. I just read it just the other day. In a recent flight from Atlanta to Phoenix, one passenger reported that there was a medical emergency on board, with an older man suddenly became unconscious because of heart failure. Strangers and every ethnicity rushed to help this man, whether it was chest compressions or starting an IV or helping breathe life into this man or praying. Everyone helped. The person on the plane reported that he listened to shock after shock from the AED and nothing helped, but no one gave up. People were praying and lifting up this man to the Lord in a way that the person reporting on the incident had never seen before. Former Heisman Trophy winner Tim Tebow was on that same plane, and he consoled the family, and he prayed with the entire section of the plane. And the plane would later land in Phoenix, where they finally got the man's pulse back, and the paramedics met him and provided immediate care. People uniting together to help a man they didn't even know. As individuals come together to help, so do we as Americans unite to serve one another. It is a spirit of freedom. It is a spirit of love. It is a spirit of healing. But we know too as Americans that it should come as no surprise that we don't always agree. But in the spirit of healing, we attempt to do our very best to work out our differences in order to live in peace and harmony at home and to maintain the standard e pluribus unum, out of many comes one. Describing the diversity of our nation, writer Stephen Prothero writes, American voices do not always harmonize. In fact, they are often discordant. To open up the American Bible is to sit down with an amazing cast of characters, when you think about it. Resolute Washington, brilliant Jefferson, melancholic Lincoln, committed Harriet Beecher Stowe, satirical Twain, prophetic King. And then we have conservatives and libertarians and liberals and radicals and Christians and Jews and novelists and poets and women and men and white and black and authors and architects, senators, representatives and voters, presidents and justices, the iconic and the unknown. And with this incredible diversity of thought, often comes the need for healing. And I believe America is truly unique in building bridges of reconciliation and understanding, mainly because we work so hard at it, and we do have a mutual respect for one another. Some of you may have heard the story years ago. One of my father's parishioners, when he was serving at Presbyterian Church in the Detroit area back in the 60s and 70s, my dad had a friendship with a man in a congregation whose son who fought in the Vietnam War and was killed in combat. It was a devastating day, as it would be for any parent when Mr. and Mrs. Meek received the word that their son, Marine Corps Lance Corporal Edward Meek, was killed on November 12th, 1966. 8 years later, 1974, in the aftermath of the Vietnam War, a nation, as maybe you recall, conflicted in many ways by the controversy of the war and the Watergate crisis. President Gerald Ford decided to grant conditional amnesty to those who evaded the draft, to those who deserted the military in time of war. Conditional amnesty calling for a pledge of allegiance to the country and a promise of 2 years of national service. President Ford said desertion in time of war is a major, serious offense, as is draft evasion. Such actions cannot be condoned. Yet reconciliation calls for an act of mercy to bind the nation's wounds and to heal the nation's divisiveness. Healing was the goal. You can imagine the relief on part of some and the outrage on part of others. One of those outrage was this man, Mr. Meek, the father whose son died in battle, and who, in a sign of protest, sent to President Ford his son's flag that had been draped over his coffin, sending a clear signal of hurt and anger over the president's decision. But amazingly, 9 months later, Mr. Meek had a change of heart about the flag that draped his son's coffin. And he had a renewal of faith and hope in his country. And he called the White House to see if he could retrieve his son's flag that he had sent to Washington. He was told that he could come and that he could reclaim it. And while waiting in the orange room of the White House, the president, of all people, walked in, presented the flag to Mr. Meek with the words, "We have been keeping this honored flag for you, and I'm honored to return it." America, the healer. What a beautiful country in which we live. Let's sing it out now with "My Country 'Tis of Thee."